Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you begin to value yourself, everything around you shifts. Life suddenly doesn't seem as daunting. You start to see your worth, and you begin to understand that you deserve happiness, peace, and success. Self-worth is the foundation for everything in life. When you value yourself, you stop settling for less than you deserve, and you start making choices that reflect your true potential. The first and most important step towards any kind of transformation is understanding your own value. We often spend our lives looking for approval from others, trying to be what they expect us to be, hoping that once we fulfill their expectations, we will finally feel worthy. But the truth is, no one can define your worth except you. When you value yourself, you stop looking for external validation. You understand that your worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion of you. Self-worth comes from within. It's about acknowledging your strengths, your qualities, and even your weaknesses. It's about knowing that you have a purpose and that you are enough just as you are. And when you realize this, you start to make different choices in life. You stop settling for less than you deserve. You no longer tolerate situations or people that drain your energy or diminish your sense of self. You start making decisions that align with who you truly are, and that's when everything begins to change. Valuing yourself is a journey that requires patience and self-compassion. It's not about being perfect or always having it all together. It's about accepting yourself with all your flaws and imperfections. When you value yourself, you no longer feel the need to constantly prove your worth. You stop comparing yourself to others, because you know that your journey is unique and no one else's story can determine your value. This shift in mindset allows you to prioritize your happiness and well-being. When you begin to value yourself, you learn to set boundaries. You stop saying yes to things that don't align with your values, and you start saying no to people who don't respect you. Realize that you are the only one responsible for your happiness, and you take ownership of that power. This might mean letting go of toxic relationships, leaving behind situations that don't serve you, or simply choosing to spend your time and energy on things that bring you joy and peace. The impact of valuing yourself goes beyond just your personal life. It affects the way you approach challenges and the way you navigate obstacles. When you know your worth, you become more confident in your decisions. You no longer doubt your abilities or question your choice. You trust that you are capable of handling whatever life throws your way. And when things don't go as planned, you bounce back quickly because you understand that failure is just a part of the journey. You don't define yourself by your setbacks or mistakes. You see them as opportunities to learn and grow. Valuing yourself also opens the door to more fulfilling relationships. When you respect yourself, you attract people who do the same. You stop settling for relationships that are one-sided or toxic. Instead, you surround yourself with people who uplift you, support your growth, and encourage you to be the best version of yourself. You begin to build a network of love, trust, and mutual respect. As you continue to value yourself, you begin to understand that you are not just worthy of good things, you are worthy of the best things in life. This mindset shifts the way you approach opportunities. You no longer settle for mediocrity, you go after what you truly deserve. And when you do this, the universe begins to align with your desires, and doors that you never thought were possible begin to open. Valuing yourself isn't just a simple act of self-love. It's a powerful transformation that changes the way you view yourself and the world around you. It empowers you to take control of your life and make decisions that bring you peace, happiness, and success. When you value yourself, you become unstoppable. When you start to value yourself, one of the most significant shifts that happen is the realization that validation from within is far more powerful than validation from external sources. We live in a world where we are constantly seeking approval from others, whether it's from family, friends, social media followers, or colleagues. We think that if someone else approves of us, then we are worthy. But the truth is, no one can truly define our worth except ourselves. The validation you seek from others can be fleeting and unreliable. People change their opinions, and their approval can be conditional. If your sense of self-worth is dependent on what others think of you, you will constantly feel like you are chasing something that is out of your control. When you value yourself, you start to realize that the most important opinion is your own. Your worth is not something to be determined by the praise or criticism of others. Instead, it comes from understanding your own value, recognizing your strengths, and accepting your flaws. This understanding doesn't come from comparing yourself to others or looking for approval. It comes from knowing that you are worthy regardless of the opinions or judgments of those around you. And when you realize this, everything changes. You stop living for others and start living for yourself. When we depend on external validation, we give away our power. We allow others to dictate how we feel about ourselves, which means we are never truly in control of our own happiness. But when you value yourself, you take back that control. You begin to trust your own judgment, make decisions based on your values, and stop seeking permission from others to feel good about who you are. You start to realize that your worth is not a reflection of how well you meet the expectations of others, but of how true you are to yourself. This shift in perspective is incredibly freeing. No longer do you need to constantly seek affirmation from others. Instead, you begin to validate yourself. When you appreciate yourself for who you are, you no longer need others to tell you that you're worthy. You can look in the mirror and be proud of the person you see, knowing that your value is intrinsic and doesn't rely on anyone else's approval. However, it's important to note that self-validation is not the same as arrogance or selfishness. It's about understanding your worth and having a deep respect for yourself. It's about recognizing that you are enough, just as you are, without needing to be perfect or meet someone else's standards. When you value yourself in this way, you set the stage for true growth and improvement. Self-validation gives you the confidence to pursue your goals, make mistakes, and learn from them without feeling defeated or worthless. You stop letting failure define you, and instead, you view it as a stepping stone toward progress. When you no longer rely on others for validation, you begin to experience a sense of freedom that comes with being authentic. You stop pretending to be someone you're not just to fit in or to please others. You begin to embrace your true self, and this authenticity is incredibly powerful. It attracts people who appreciate you for who you truly are and allows you to build meaningful relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. Self-validation also helps to protect your mental health. In a world full of comparisons, it's easy to feel like you're not good enough or that you don't measure up. But when you validate yourself, you stop comparing your journey to others' journey. You understand that everyone is on their own path, and just because someone else is ahead or behind doesn't mean you are any less valuable. You start to appreciate your own journey and the unique lessons it brings. This shift doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always easy. We are conditioned from a young age to seek external validation. But as you continue to value yourself, you start to build the strength to ignore the noise and focus on your own voice. You begin to trust yourself and your decisions more. You stop feeling like you need approval for everything you do, and instead you find peace in making choices that align with your values, regardless of what others might think. You become less affected by criticism and rejection, because you no longer rely on others to tell you your worth. When you stop looking for validation from others and start validating yourself, you not only change the way you view yourself, but also the way you interact with the world. You become more confident, more authentic, and more resilient. And with that, the opportunities that once felt out of reach become attainable because you believe you deserve them. Self-worth is not about being perfect or having everything figured out. It's about accepting yourself fully, flaws and all, and realizing that you are enough as you are. Society often bombards us with messages about perfection, how we should look, how we should act, what success should look like. These societal standards can make us feel inadequate, like we are always falling short of some ideal. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion. It's an unrealistic goal that nobody can ever fully achieve. When you begin to value yourself, you realize that your worth is not determined by how perfect you are, but by how authentic and true you are to yourself. This understanding brings a sense of liberation. You no longer have to live up to the unrealistic standards set by others. You stop chasing after an impossible version of yourself and instead embrace who you are right now. You learn to accept the parts of you that are flawed, and you stop seeing them as shortcomings. Instead, you see them as part of what makes you uniquely you. Your flaws are not something to be ashamed of. They are an essential part of your story. They are the things that make you human, the things that help you grow, and the things that give you character. When you value yourself, you recognize that you don't need to be flawless to be worthy of love, respect, and happiness. Self-acceptance is a powerful thing. It frees you from the constant pressure to be something that you're not. It allows you to show up as your true self without fear of judgment. You realize that you don't need to pretend to be perfect, because being authentic is what truly matters. When you embrace yourself, flaws and all, you stop seeking validation from others. You no longer need anyone's approval to feel good about who you are. Instead, you learn to validate yourself, acknowledging your own worth without needing to hear it from anyone else. This acceptance doesn't mean you stop striving for growth or improvement. Valuing yourself means recognizing that you are a work in progress, and that's okay. Perfection isn't the goal. Growth is. When you accept yourself, you understand that you don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to be perfect at everything. You can make mistakes, learn from them, and continue moving forward. You give yourself permission to be imperfect, and in that imperfection, you find your strength. Your imperfections are not barriers. They are opportunities for growth. They are the areas where you can learn, evolve, and become the best version of yourself. Self-worth is about embracing the journey, not just the destination. It's about understanding that who you are in this moment is enough, even if you're still working on becoming the person you want to be. You don't have to wait until you've achieved some ideal version of success or perfection to feel worthy. You are already worthy just as you are. This realization shifts the way you view yourself. It allows you to approach life with compassion and kindness, both toward yourself and others. When you value yourself, you don't beat yourself up over mistakes or imperfections. Instead, you show yourself the same compassion that you would show a close friend. When you stop chasing perfection and start embracing who you are, you experience a profound shift in how you see the world. You stop comparing yourself to others, because you realize that everyone has their own unique journey. Your path is different, and that's okay. Perfection is not the goal. Progress is. You begin to see that everyone has their own struggles, their own challenges, and their own flaws. When you embrace your own imperfections, you begin to see the beauty in other people's imperfections as well. You stop judging yourself so harshly, and you extend that same grace to others. This shift also changes the way you approach failure. Instead of seeing failure as something to be ashamed of or as evidence that you are not good enough, You begin to see it as a natural part of the process. Failure is not a reflection of your worth. It is simply a step on the journey towards success. When you value yourself, you understand that failure is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become stronger. It is not a final verdict on your abilities or your potential. You can fail, get up, and try again, because you know that your worth is not defined by your successes or your failure. Your worth is inherent in who you are. Valuing yourself and accepting yourself fully allows you to experience life more fully. You no longer feel the need to hide your flaws or pretend to be someone you're not. You show up authentically, embracing all of who you are. You stop waiting for perfection and start living your life with joy, knowing that you are enough, just as you are. And in that acceptance, you create the space for growth, transformation, and true happiness. Valuing yourself means taking care of your emotional and mental health, and it starts with understanding the importance of setting boundaries. Boundaries are often misunderstood. Many people associate them with being rude or selfish. However, boundaries are one of the most powerful forms of self-respect. They are the invisible lines you draw around yourself that protect your well-being and your peace of mind. When you start to value yourself, you realize that you are responsible for your own happiness. And part of that responsibility is ensuring that others do not overstep your limits. Setting boundaries means knowing when to say no and not feeling guilty about it. Often we say yes to things or people out of obligation, fear of conflict, or desire to please others. We might agree to do something even when we don't want to, because we fear rejection or upsetting someone. But the truth is, constantly overextending yourself leads to burnout, resentment, and frustration. When you value yourself, you learn that saying no is not a negative thing. It is an act of self-care. Saying no allows you to protect your time, energy, and emotional resources. It allows you to focus on what truly matters to you and to preserve your peace. Boundaries are also about recognizing your emotional limits. We often allow people to take advantage of us emotionally by constantly being available for others, while neglecting our own needs. When you value yourself, you begin to recognize that your feelings matter. You learn to take the time to process your emotions and give yourself the care you need. You stop allowing others to drain you emotionally or take more from you than you're willing to give. In relationships, whether they are personal or professional, it is important to ensure that there is mutual respect and understanding. You set the tone for how others treat you by the boundaries you create. Emotional well-being is closely tied to mental health. When you value yourself, you learn to protect your mental space. This means minimizing stress and avoiding situations or people that negatively affect your mindset. It means recognizing when you are overwhelmed and taking steps to remove yourself from stressful environments. It also means being mindful of your thoughts. The way you think about yourself has a profound impact on your mental health. If you constantly criticize yourself or focus on your flaws, it becomes difficult to maintain a healthy mindset. But when you value yourself, you stop engaging in negative self-talk. You replace harsh judgments with kindness and understanding. You acknowledge that, like everyone else, you are a work in progress, and that perfection is not the goal. You are enough as you are, and you deserve to treat yourself with love and respect. Taking care of your mental health also means giving yourself permission to rest. In a world that glorifies constant productivity and hustle, it can be easy to feel guilty for taking time to rest. But rest is essential for your overall well-being. When you value yourself, you recognize that rest is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It allows you to recharge, refocus, and come back stronger. You learn to listen to your body and mind and honor the need for break. Whether it's taking a day off work, getting enough sleep, or simply taking a moment for yourself, rest is an important way of taking care of your mental and emotional health. Self-care also involves surrounding yourself with positive influences. When you value yourself, you start to notice who and what contributes to your happiness, and who and what drains you. You begin to surround yourself with people who lift you up and support your growth. You no longer tolerate toxic relationships or people who make you feel small. Instead, you prioritize relationships that nurture your soul, that encourage you to be the best version of yourself. You begin to recognize that you deserve to be surrounded by people who respect your boundaries, appreciate your value, and contribute positively to your life. Another aspect of emotional well-being is the ability to forgive yourself. We all make mistakes, and we all have moments we wish we could take back. But when you value yourself, you realize that mistakes do not define you. You allow yourself the grace to learn from those mistakes and move forward without holding on to guilt or shame. Self-forgiveness is an essential part of mental and emotional health. It allows you to grow, evolve, and continue on your journey without being weighed down by past regret. When you value yourself, you begin to see that taking care of your emotional and mental health is not selfish, but rather an act of strength. It empowers you to show up for others in a way that is sustainable and healthy. You are better able to give love, support, and care to others when you first take care of yourself. It's a reminder that you cannot pour from an empty cup. The more you take care of your emotional and mental well-being, the more you can be there for those you love and make meaningful contributions to the world around you. When you begin to value yourself, you come to understand that your happiness and well-being are ultimately your responsibility. Too often we place the weight of our happiness on external factors, the approval of others, the success of our careers, or even the circumstances in our lives. We believe that once we have certain things or meet certain conditions, we will finally be happy. But when you value yourself, you realize that happiness is not something you have to chase. It's something that comes from within, and it starts with taking ownership of your own life and choices. Your happiness is not dependent on anyone else's actions or decisions. It is not something that someone else can give to you. It's a state of being that comes from understanding who you are, what you want, and what brings you joy. It means not relying on others to fill the gaps or solve your problems. You take control of your own life and make decisions that align with your values and desires. When you value yourself, you stop waiting for someone or something to make you happy. Instead, you take proactive steps to create a life that reflects your true self. This realization is empowering. When you stop relying on others to determine your happiness, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster that comes with trying to please everyone or meet others' expectations. You stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect relationship, or the perfect job to make you happy. You understand that happiness is a choice, and it's one that you can make right now. It's about finding contentment in the present moment and choosing to focus on the positive aspects of your life, even when things aren't perfect. Valuing yourself also means recognizing that your well-being is just as important as anyone else's. We often prioritize the needs and desires of others, especially those we care about, and neglect our own needs in the process. We tell ourselves that we'll be happy once everyone else is happy, or once everything else is in order. But when you value yourself, you understand that you cannot pour from an empty cup. You need to take care of your own needs first, so you can show up fully for the people and things that matter most to you. This doesn't mean being selfish or neglecting the needs of others. It means recognizing that self-care is essential for your well-being, and that by prioritizing your own happiness, you are better able to give to others. When you take care of your physical, emotional, and mental health, you are more energized, more present, and more capable of contributing to the world around you. You understand that your own happiness is not a luxury. It is a necessity for a fulfilling and meaningful life. Taking ownership of your happiness also means that you stop waiting for external validation to feel good about yourself. When you value yourself, you stop seeking approval from others in order to feel worthy. You no longer wait for someone to tell you that you're good enough or that you've done well. Instead, you begin to acknowledge your own worth, celebrate your achievements, and embrace your uniqueness. You recognize that you don't need anyone's permission to be happy or to live the life you desire. You trust your own instincts and make decisions based on what feels right for you, not based on what others think you should do. You also start to understand that happiness is not about the absence of problems or difficulties. Life will always present challenges, and things won't always go according to plan. But when you value yourself, you approach these challenges with a different mindset. You realize that your happiness isn't dependent on avoiding difficulties, but rather on how you respond to them. You learn to handle setbacks with resilience and confidence, knowing that your worth is not defined by your circumstances. You develop a strong sense of inner peace that remains intact, even when things around you are chaotic. Valuing yourself means taking full responsibility for your life, your choices, and your happiness. It means making decisions that support your well-being, even if they are difficult or uncomfortable. It means choosing to take care of yourself, to set boundaries, and to prioritize your mental and emotional health. You realize that you are the creator of your own happiness, and you have the power to shape your life in a way that brings you joy and fulfillment. When you make the decision to value yourself, you stop waiting for happiness to come from external sources. Instead, you become the source of your own happiness. You create a life that aligns with your values, your desires, and your true self. And as you do, you begin to experience a sense of peace, contentment, and fulfillment that no one else can take away. When you value yourself, you stop giving your power away to others. You stop letting people, situations, or circumstances dictate how you feel about yourself. So often in life, we give away our power by seeking approval from others, relying on others for our happiness, or allowing the opinions of others to shape our self-worth. But when you start to value yourself, you realize that your worth is not defined by anyone else. It's defined by you. You take back control over your emotions, your thoughts, and your actions, knowing that you are the only one responsible for how you feel. One of the first steps in taking back your power is recognizing that you are in charge of your own life. This means making decisions that align with your values, your goals, and your desires, without seeking permission or approval from others. When you value yourself, you stop living your life based on other people's expectations. You stop trying to meet everyone else's needs while ignoring your own. You begin to realize that your feelings, your opinions, and your desires matter just as much as anyone else's, and you deserve to prioritize them. You stop letting fear and insecurity control your decisions. For so long, many of us make choices out of fear of rejection, judgment, or failure. We allow other people's opinions or the fear of what might happen to guide us. But when you value yourself, you trust your intuition and your judgment. You no longer let fear hold you back from pursuing what truly makes you happy. You understand that taking risks, making mistakes, and facing challenges are all part of the journey to growth. You take control over the direction of your life, knowing that even if things don't go perfectly, you are still moving in the direction that feels right for you. Valuing yourself also means understanding that you do not need anyone else to validate your existence. Too many times we look to others for reassurance and affirmation. We want others to tell us we are doing well, that we are good enough, or that we are worthy. But when you begin to value yourself, you stop seeking external validation. You realize that you don't need anyone else's permission to feel good about who you are. You stop depending on the opinions of others to feel worthy. Instead, you begin to give yourself the validation that you've been seeking all along. You look at your own reflection and you see someone worthy, capable, and deserving of everything they desire. When you value yourself, you stop giving away your emotional energy to people who do not deserve it. We've all had relationships or situations that drain us. People who take from us without giving back, situations that leave us feeling empty, or environments that suck the life out of us. But when you recognize your worth, you stop tolerating this. You set boundaries that protect your emotional well-being. You stop giving your time, energy, and love to those who do not appreciate it, and you begin to invest in relationships that nourish and uplift you. Taking back your power also means learning to say no when necessary. For so long, many of us say yes to things we don't want to do because we fear disappointing others, avoiding conflict, or seeking approval. But when you value yourself, you understand that it's okay to say no. You stop overextending yourself to please others, and you start protecting your time and energy for the things that truly matter to you. Saying no is not selfish. It's a necessary act of self-respect. It allows you to conserve your energy for the things and people who are aligned with your goals, your values, and your well-being. Additionally, when you value yourself, you stop giving away your power to external circumstances. Life is unpredictable, and things often don't go as planned. We face challenges, setbacks, and difficulties that we cannot control. But when you value yourself, you understand that your worth is not defined by the ups and downs of life. You are not less valuable because things aren't perfect. You stop allowing life's circumstances to dictate your sense of self-worth. Instead, you develop the inner strength to navigate through challenges with resilience and grace. Finally, when you take back your power, you stop living in fear of judgment or criticism. We are often afraid of what others will think of us, how we will be perceived, or what they will say behind our backs. But when you value yourself, you realize that the opinions of others do not define who you are. You embrace who you are without fear of judgment, and you stop letting the fear of what others might think hold you back from being your authentic self. By taking back your power, you take control over your life. You stop seeking approval from others, and you stop letting people, situations, or circumstances define your worth. You become the author of your own story, and you begin living a life that is true to who you are. You trust yourself, make decisions based on your own values, and create a life that reflects your unique worth. You are no longer a victim of external influences. You become the empowered creator of your own life. When you begin to value yourself, one of the most significant changes you will experience is the ability to stop shrinking yourself to meet other people's expectations. So often, we adjust who we are to fit into the boxes that society or the people around us create. We feel the pressure to behave a certain way, dress a certain way, or even think a certain way, just to gain acceptance. But when you truly understand your worth, you stop doing this. You realize that you don't need to diminish your light to make others feel comfortable. You begin to stand tall, proud of who you are, and unapologetic about your authenticity. The pressure to meet others' expectations is something that can weigh heavily on us. We are constantly told what we should be, how we should act, and how we should look. Society, family, and friends, sometimes unknowingly, impose standards on us that don't reflect our true selves. This leads to self-doubt and confusion. We begin to wonder if who we are is enough. We often try to fit into molds that were never meant for us, simply because we are seeking approval from others. But the moment you start valuing yourself, you stop seeking external approval. You recognize that you don't need anyone's validation to be worthy of respect and love. When you value yourself, you stop compromising your own needs and desires just to please others. You stop shrinking your dreams and aspirations to fit into a narrative that doesn't belong to you. You start to own your choices and take responsibility for your own happiness. It's a powerful feeling to stop living for others and start living for yourself. You stop apologizing for being who you are. You no longer feel the need to justify your actions or decisions to anyone. You realize that your worth is inherent, and you don't have to prove it to anyone. As you continue this journey, you'll find that your confidence begins to grow. You no longer feel like you have to conform to society's ideas of beauty, success, or happiness. You learn to trust your intuition, and you start making decisions based on your own values, not someone else's expectations. You stop asking for permission to follow your heart, and begin to create your own path. This shift doesn't mean that you become arrogant or dismissive of others. It means you begin to value yourself enough to prioritize your needs, your happiness, and your goals. You also learn to set boundaries when you value yourself. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. They are a way of saying to the world, I am worthy of respect, and I will not tolerate behavior that diminishes my self-worth. When you stop shrinking yourself to meet other people's expectations, you also start to surround yourself with people who respect your boundaries. You attract those who appreciate you for who you are and value the things you stand for. You no longer settle for relationships that drain you or make you feel small. Instead, you build connections that empower you and lift you up. The process of not shrinking yourself requires you to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to show up as your true self, even when it's uncomfortable or uncertain. It takes courage to be authentic in a world that often values conformity over individuality. But the more you practice valuing yourself, the easier it becomes. You start to realize that the fear of rejection, judgment, or criticism is not nearly as powerful as the joy and peace that comes from being true to who you are. You learn to embrace discomfort as a sign of growth, and instead of running from it, you face it head-on. This shift is also freeing. You no longer feel weighed down by the expectations of others. You are no longer bound by the need to conform. You begin to live with a sense of liberation, knowing that you are enough exactly as you are. You embrace your uniqueness, your quirks, and your individuality, because you know that these things make you special. You stop apologizing for not fitting into someone else's mold. Instead, you wear your individuality as a badge of honor, knowing that it's what makes you truly remarkable. When you stop shrinking yourself, you begin to realize that the world has a place for you just as you are. You stop thinking that you need to change yourself to be accepted or loved. Instead, you embrace the fact that your authentic self is worthy of all the good things life has to offer. You no longer need to fit into anyone else's expectations, because you know that your unique contributions, your voice, and your presence are enough. This transformation, though gradual, leads to profound growth. You begin to see the world in a new light. You realize that the world doesn't require you to shrink yourself to fit in. It needs you to shine brightly in your own truth. You start to show up as the person you've always been meant to be, confident, whole, and unapologetically yourself.